In this video, we are looking at compound events. So multiple events that are happening. So the set of all possible outcomes of one or more events is called the sample space. You can use tables and tree diagrams to find the sample space of two or more events. So for example, you randomly choose a bread and a type of sandwich. Find the sample space. How many different sandwiches are possible? So we can use a tree diagram, which is looking at, okay, if I choose, for example, my bread is wheat bread, then from that I could choose a ham sandwich on wheat. I could choose turkey. I could choose steak. Or I could choose chicken. So there's 4 sandwiches there. Now, if I use sourdough bread, again, I could choose ham, turkey, steak, or chicken. So we can see there are 8 total sandwiches here. So that's our sample space. There are 8 different outcomes, right? You could have ham on wheat, turkey on wheat, steak on wheat, chicken on wheat, ham on sourdough, turkey on sourdough, steak on sourdough, or chicken on sourdough. So our sample space, we've got 8 possible outcomes. Now, we can also use what we call the fundamental counting principle to find the total number of possible outcomes. So instead of drawing that tree diagram here, we could have looked at this and said, okay, there are 2 bread types and 4 sandwich types, and 2 times 4 is 8, which you can see we got from our tree diagram. So looking at this example, find the total number of possible outcomes of rolling a number cube and flipping a coin. So you could use a table as well. So we did a tree diagram in the last example. You could use a table to show, okay, I could roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and I could flip heads or tails. And then keeping track of all of these, right, you could roll a 1 and a heads, a 2 and a heads, a 3 and a heads, and so on. And doing this, you would see you get a total of 12 different outcomes. Or you could say, well, this number cube has 6 sides, and a coin, heads or tails, 2 sides, so 6 times 2 is 12 total outcomes. All right, so now let's look at this example. It says, how many different outfits can you make from the t-shirts, jeans, and shoes in the closet? Use the fundamental counting principle to identify the total number of possible outcomes. Okay, so we can see if we count all of the t-shirts, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shirts. So if the first thing you're doing is choosing a t-shirt, right, there are 7 of those. There are 4 pairs of jeans, and there are 3 pairs of shoes. So we can multiply the total possible outcomes for each of those events. 7 times 4 times 3. Okay, and that would give us 7 times 4 is 28. So 28 times 3, which I believe is 84. So 84 possible outcomes. So you could make 84 different outfits with what's in that closet. Okay, now a compound event consists of 2 or more events. As with a single event, the probability of a compound event is the quotient of the number of favorable outcomes and the number of possible outcomes. So if you remember before, we were looking at the probability of flipping heads, for example, is 1 over 2, where 1, flipping heads, is the favorable outcome, and 2 is the total outcome. So you could get heads or tails. So we can do the same thing with a compound event. So looking back at that example 2, where we were rolling a number cube and flipping a coin, this one says, what is the probability of rolling a number greater than 4 and flipping tails? So a number greater than 4 is going to be 5 or 6, and tails, obviously, is if it lands on tails. So we can see these are our 2 possible outcomes. So if we want to know the probability, right, of greater than 4 and tails, that's just going to be 2 out of our 12 possible outcomes, which of course simplifies to 1/6. Okay, now we can actually also use that counting principle to do the same thing. So we know we're doing 2 different events here. So the probability of first rolling a number greater than 4, right? You've got 5 and 6. So that's 2 out of the 6 numbers. So you could do 2/6, which is 1/3, and multiply that by the probability of flipping tails. So flipping that coin, there are 2 possible outcomes. The favorable one landing on tails is 1. So if we multiply these 2 probabilities, 2/6 times 2/6 times 1/2, we get 2/12, which is 1/6. So just like with our other things, yes, you can create a table and look at all of the outcomes, or we can multiply the probability of each of those events together to get our probability of both things happening.